My younger sister, Lois, called me just before our mom's funeral. She hadn't replied to any of my messages, so I was surprised to hear from her. She told me she'd just come back from Hawaii with Keith and brought me some chocolates. I was really upset because she hadn't bothered to respond to me earlier, so I ended up yelling at her in front of everyone at the funeral. I said something hurtful about her taking my husband, which was a terrible thing to say. Lois was confused and just asked, "What?" before I hung up on her. I turned off my phone and tried to calm down as I sat with the rest of the family. My name's Emily, and I just turned 38. I grew up in a family of 4. My parents, my sister Lois, who's 6 years younger, and me. My parents were pretty strict, especially with me being the oldest. But they always spoiled Lois because she was charming. Whenever she wanted something, she'd flash a smile and say, "Emily, I want this," and I'd usually give in. Unfortunately, this didn't change even as she got older, and she became quite a troublesome sister. Dad passed away 8 years ago from an illness, and about 6 months ago, Mom got a terminal diagnosis. She was in and out of the hospital. I married Keith, a colleague, 2 years ago and moved out to an apartment near my office. For the past 6 months, I've been driving an hour each way to take care of Mom between work. Lois moved back home and quit her job a year ago after a breakup. Even though she lived there, she kept pushing the caregiving responsibility onto me, saying I was better at it. So I took a month off work to look after Mom. But despite my efforts, she passed away 2 days ago. And where was Lois? She'd gone off to Hawaii a week before Mom's passing. I tried to convince her to stay, but she wouldn't listen. At the funeral, after the priest finished speaking, friends and family started paying their respects. It was touching to see not just relatives, but also many of Mom's friends there to grieve. Some colleagues from my company came too. "I'm sorry for your loss," one of them said. "Thank you. I really appreciate you letting me take time off to be with my mom in her final days," I replied. "He's actually my father-in-law, the president of the company where I work. He's been really understanding about everything I've been going through and has supported me a lot." "But where's Keith? I haven't spotted him here yet." "Well, he's been overseas on a business trip since last week, and I haven't been able to reach him," I explained. "Oh, I see. I'll ask the sales manager about it," I said, trying to figure out where Keith was. Keith and I work in different departments because of the big company he runs. He's always busy with sales and often away on business trips. I tried to understand, but it was hard not having him here during such a tough time. I was worried about handling everything alone, especially with no contact from him or my sister. Meanwhile, my father-in-law made the effort to be there for the funeral, despite his busy schedule. His support meant the world to me, and it almost brought me to tears. I had to hold him back as we rode in the limo to the crematory with the rest of the family. When I turned my phone back on, I found almost 30 voicemails, mostly from Lois. "Answer your phone. You can't just make up some ridiculous lies because you're upset that I took Keith from you," she yelled in her messages. "She took Keith from me?" I questioned, trying to recall if Lois had hinted at something like that during her call before the funeral. But I was too busy dealing with the mourners to fully grasp what she was saying. Lois and Keith having an affair? That couldn't be true, could it? I felt a sudden rush of anxiety and confusion. Was Keith really on a trip with her? As I hurriedly checked the voicemail, I found several messages from my husband. "I'm so sorry, but you're strong. You can handle this on your own. But Lois, I need to be there for her. We need to end things," he said in a message that felt like it came from a soap opera script. Hearing those words, I couldn't help but mutter, "I wish I hadn't heard that." Finding out that my husband and sister were having an affair and enjoying themselves in Hawaii during my mother's funeral felt like a cruel blow. "You need to come right away if you want to say your final goodbye to Mom. We're already heading to the crematory," I reluctantly informed my sister over the phone. "That's not funny. Stop lying. You're just bitter because I took Keith from you," she shot back. "But it's true. You must be upset about losing your husband." "Yes, he's the next company president and wealthy." "I get it, Emily, but there are lies, and then there are terrible lies." "You're an adult. You should know better," she retorted. "I never thought I'd hear that from you," I replied. I was surprised, though. I had no idea that you and Keith were cheating. I could almost hear the smirk in Lois's voice. She'd always loved playing tricks on me since we were kids and would laugh when I fell for them. I sighed in frustration. Anyway, this isn't the time for this. If you want to say your final goodbye to Mom, come now, I urged. I'm tired of that lie. So why do you have cheese? Lois asked abruptly. Ask his father, I replied, throwing the question back at them. I could hear them discussing on the other end, probably caught off guard by me bringing up his father. Eventually my husband, who seemed to be with Lois, took the phone. Emily, is that true? He asked. If you don't believe it, do whatever you want. I'm hanging up now, I stated firmly before ending the call. Soon we arrived at the crematory. It was my last chance to say goodbye to Mom, and my mind was in turmoil with the whirlwind of emotions from the past few days and the pain of losing my mother. I felt lost and overwhelmed, tears streaming down my cheeks. Seeing me like this, one of my relatives comforted me, saying, Your mom would surely be grateful to you, Emily, for taking such good care of her until the end. I stood in front of my mother's casket, bidding her my final farewell. Mom, thank you for everything. I'm going to miss you so much, I whispered. Just as her casket was being carried out for cremation, there was sudden commotion. Wait a minute. Where's Mom? My sister and husband burst in, their voices loud and frantic. Lois tried to hold onto the casket as it disappeared behind the doors, but they closed abruptly, leaving her wailing in despair, with Keith looking stunned. We should move along now. We're disturbing others, I said, trying to keep calm. Why didn't you tell me, Emily? I didn't get to see Mom at the end. It's your fault. Lois accused me, her voice filled with anguish. My fault? I echoed, bewildered by her accusation. Absolutely. If it was this serious, you should have told me earlier. You never said anything. Lois accused, her voice filled with frustration. I couldn't help but feel exasperated. How many times had I explained our mother's health condition to her? Every time she'd just brush it off, saying, I don't know how to handle any of this. I'll leave it to you, Emily. That's right. This all happened because you didn't explain how serious Mom's condition was. It's your fault, Lois continued to blame me. Even Keith, my husband, joined in, pointing fingers at me. I stared at them in disbelief. Then what were you two doing all this time? I demanded, my voice rising with anger. They gasped, finally falling silent. If you can't say it, I will. You were off on a fun-filled romantic getaway in Hawaii together, weren't you? As the relatives murmured, clearly taken aback by the unfolding drama, I couldn't help but feel the weight of their disbelief. For so long, whenever they asked, what's wrong with Lois? Or isn't Keith coming? I've been making excuses for them, trying to shield them from judgment. Mom, I'm sorry. I really wanted to say goodbye to you more peacefully, I whispered in my mind, seeking her forgiveness. Gathering my resolve, I knew I had to clear the air. When did this affair start exactly? You both knew I was on leave caring for Mom, right? I was struggling, asking for help countless times, but all you did was have fun together, didn't you? I questioned, my voice tinged with frustration and hurt. Enough. It's all your fault, Emily. You didn't keep Keith close enough. Lois snapped back. What's that supposed to mean? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. You need to prioritize your husband more. He's been feeling bored at home because all you talk about is work and caregiving. Poor Keith, Lois chided, her words dripping with disdain. Oh, so that's what he said, I retorted, shooting a glare at Keith, who quickly averted his eyes, unable to meet my gaze. Emily, you managed to marry a wealthy future company president, but you've become conceited. That's why he was drawn to me. It's always been like this with you, Lois continued, her tone accusatory. In reality, Lois had a history of stealing my boyfriends back in high school and university. The only time she didn't succeed was with Keith because she was already with her own boyfriend then. What a disappointment. From now on, I'll be with Keith and become the future president's wife. So break up with him, Lois demanded. Fine, you can have Keith. I'll divorce him, I declared, my resolve firm. By then, I was beyond caring. When I decided to marry Keith, I had no clue he was the president's son. He worked at a regional branch and later joined my department at headquarters. Keith was charming, easygoing, and quickly became part of our team. As we grew closer, I developed feelings for him. We started dating, and when he proposed, I was thrilled. It wasn't until I visited his parents' house that I learned his father was the company president. It was quite a shock. So promise me you won't come back later begging to avoid the divorce, Keith pleaded. I won't do that, I assured him. Are you really sure about leaving me? He pressed. Yes, I am, I replied firmly. If you leave me, no man will want to marry a workaholic like you. You know that, right? He warned. I'll live my life as I please on my own terms. But for today, please just say your final goodbye to Mom properly, I pleaded with him. Keith and Lois exchanged knowing looks, smirking as if they had won some sort of victory. The relatives watched on, their brows furrowed, clearly disturbed by the unfolding situation. I'm truly sorry for the scene you all witnessed. I apologized to my relatives, feeling a pang of guilt. I heard Lois whispering to me, always playing the good girl. I hate this about you. I've tolerated a lot from her because she's my younger sister, but I've had enough. I won't consider her family anymore. I'm divorcing Keith, and now I feel like I have no family left. All I can do is prepare myself for that reality. I bit my lip, feeling the weight of it all. 2 weeks have passed since then. I moved out of the apartment I shared with Keith, packed up everything, and settled into a new condo near the office. I've even put my parents' house up for sale. There's nothing left tying me to the past. Lois has moved in with Keith as I moved out. Keith and I have already finalized our divorce papers and submitted them to the courthouse. I'm sure they're happily starting their new life together now. Now that I'm done with Mom's paperwork, it's time for revenge. Watch over me, Mom, I whispered to her portrait, a determined smile on my face. Enjoy your honeymoon phase while you can, you too. The next day, as I went back to the office to sort out my job reinstatement, my phone buzzed incessantly with voicemails piling up. Hey, what's happening? We're divorced, right? Why am I being asked to pay $30,000? Keith's voice sounded confused and agitated. Worried they might show up uninvited at my new place, I suggested meeting at a local diner to discuss. Once we sat down, Keith was furious, practically frothing at the mouth. I got some legal document. What's going on? We're already divorced, aren't we? He yelled. Exactly. I'm just as confused. Lois chimed in, equally puzzled. I had instructed my lawyer to claim $40,000 from Keith as my share of the property and $30,000 from Lois for her portion of our mother's medical care coverage. The documents must have arrived at their places. It was something they should have anticipated, but evidently didn't. I was exasperated. You just need to pay what you owe, I insisted firmly. That's not fair. Don't think you can get away with this. I've suffered a lot of emotional distress. Should I sue you for that too? Keith threatened angrily. Emotional distress? You cheated. Plain and simple. So pay up, I retorted, refusing to back down. They fell silent, perhaps realizing they couldn't argue with the law. Then, after a pause, Lois turned her gaze towards me. So, Emily, it's all about the money for you after all, she remarked coldly. Fine, I'll let Keith handle the payment. If I borrow from my dad, we can easily come up with the $70,000. Keith, I know you don't have any savings. Lois, are you really okay being with a guy who has no money? I interjected. Keith will become president soon. Then he'll be wealthy. It's just a matter of time. Lois replied confidently. Oh, Lois, you're after the money too, aren't you? I couldn't help but comment, feeling a mix of disbelief and disappointment. No, I have plenty of love. Dad's been saying for a while that he'll retire at 65. So in 2 years, I'll be president, Keith asserted confidently. Really? That would be something, I replied, trying to hide my skepticism. I'm definitely going to be president. I'm his only son, Keith affirmed. I wonder. I couldn't help but chuckle, my doubt seeping through. I can't believe this. Has she lost it? Lois muttered, clearly annoyed. But the real revenge plan I had in store was just getting started. Keith, you've been taking a lot of time off work, citing family funerals, right? I asked casually. Well, my mother-in-law is family too, Keith replied, trying to justify his absences. That's true, but the company is aware of what you've actually been up to, I continued, watching Keith's expression carefully. Huh? What do you mean? He asked, clearly confused. Do you know that your father attended Mom's funeral? I dropped the bombshell, knowing I had purposely kept this information from Keith and Lois. That was you, Keith realized, his eyes widening in shock. You didn't do any caregiving at all. You have the nerve to lie about taking family leave for that, and you've gone off on several business trips with Lois instead, right? I've reported that too. I stated matter-of-factly. How did you find out? Keith stammered, clearly caught off guard. Lois has been posting photos on social media, showing where she's been and when. And there were a few pictures with you in them. Quite shocking, I revealed. Huh? You knew about my social media? Keith asked, surprised. It's the same account you had back in high school. Of course I'd know, I replied. Lois shifted uncomfortably, and Keith seemed stunned by my revelations. Wait, does Dad really know everything? He asked, looking bewildered. Just as my mother was family to you, your father considered her family too. So of course he knew about the funeral, as it should be reported to the company. Even after the funeral, he reached out to me several times to check on me. So I reported everything to him. And he's quite furious. He also made it clear he has no intention of making you the next president. I explained, dropping another bombshell. Huh? But I'm his son. Keith protested, disbelief written all over his face. He said he doesn't recall ever mentioning our company follows hereditary succession. He also made it clear he doesn't need a son who would act so disloyally. I informed them, relishing their shock. So Keith won't be the president? Lois asked, her voice filled with disbelief. As I watched their pale faces, I decided to push them even further. And just so you know, I'll be taking over as president starting next month. Huh? Keith and Lois exclaimed simultaneously. In fact, I've just received the official notice from the president and my superiors at the company. I've been formally appointed as the new president, I announced confidently. There's no way they'd make you president. Keith protested, clearly rattled. If you think it's a lie, why don't you call your father and ask? I challenged him. Keith hurriedly dialed his father's number, while Lois, his new wife, watched anxiously. So Emily is really going to be the president? It's true? So I won't become the president's wife? If I had known, I wouldn't have taken you from Emily. Lois lamented, her voice tinged with regret. But you just said you loved me, Keith muttered, stunned by the turn of events. That was considering your assets, I clarified firmly. What did you say? Keith's voice rose in confusion and frustration. Unable to tolerate their squabbling any longer, I stood up. If you two want to argue, do it somewhere else. And I'll be expecting the payment. Thank you. Wait, please don't leave me. Please, sis, support me, Keith pleaded desperately. I evaded their outstretched hands and walked away. Eventually, the couple ended up divorcing. Keith was demoted by his father and eventually resigned from his job. Now he works multiple part-time jobs every day to pay off his debts to me. Lois, on the other hand, is reportedly working at a bar at night. Initially, she seemed to be doing well, but she fell victim to a bad situation after being deceived by a dishonest man. Meanwhile, I've become the president. Admittedly, it's for a small company that operates as a subsidiary in the caregiving industry, established based on the proposal I submitted during my caregiving leave. However, the caregiving sector is projected to grow in the future, and I'm determined to excel. I'll give it my all from here on out.